good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Shed Adventures. And what are we going to talk about? Well, today I'm going to have, and I apologise early, a little bit of a rant against some of the YouTube videos that you may see on knots. So let's talk about knots. And what a first thing to do is this is the best book I've ever seen on knots. Burgess's Knots, Ties and Splices, revised by Crab Searle. This is just in my view, the source of all inspiration and all knowledge on knots. Originally published in 1884 and reprinted 11 times. Revised and rewritten in 1934, reprinted 14 times. This further revised edition first published in 1977. This is the book to keep as a sailor and a climber in the bottom of your rucksack for those dark nights, waiting for the tide or on a climb and you've got nothing better to do. There's a lot of fun to be had looking through some of these knots. I want to read you a little bit from the introduction, just because although this has been revised a number of times, they've really tried not to change the English too much. There are love knots, matrimonial knots, Gordian knots. These are figurative. There is the Stafford knot, the Bouchier knot, the Henge knot, the Dacre knot, and the Harrington knot, which is not a knot at all. These are heraldic. There is the monkey knot, the Peruvian knot, the Wynn knot, and these are conjurer's knots. They are fancy knots. However, there are the weaver's knots, builders, sailors' knots, fishermen's knots. These are the real and useful knots. They are the bends, hitches, lashings, seizings, whipping, shortening, stopperings, bowlines and splicings, which are used in everyday life. What a fantastic set of English words there you have. And it goes on to give you the history. The word knot comes from the Old English knotter, C-N-O-T-T-A, to join together, and the sailor's bend comes from the Anglo-Saxon word bygan, B-Y-G-A-N, to make a loop or to fashion a bight in a rope. First mention of knots goes right back to Homer. Amazing. So this is the book I would recommend. Now, I have to also be honest, because I'm going to direct you today to the wonders of YouTube and the interweb as well, where you will find some really fantastic resource on tying knots. But what I want to talk about is the 6 knots that I think you should all learn as a climber and a sailor and a camper. And I want to have a rant about the 18 different ways to tie a bowline, how to tie a bowline in a second, all the fancy stuff that you see. Please forget it. Learn a knot, learn it properly, and get the muscle memory so you can tie any of the knots I'm going to talk about. This is a bowline. You can tie it in your sleep, and you can tie it when you're cold and frightened or in the dark. And you've just got it there. You don't need to learn the fancy stuff. You don't need to impress your friends. If you want to tie a figure of 8, you know how to do it, and you can just do it every time right, first time. Once you've got that, and it's not minutes, it's weeks, it's years of work, then maybe go off and learn some of the fancy tricks. But when you want these knots will save your life. These climbing knots, these sailing knots, your life and other people's lives will depend on them. So learn to do them the simple way, the right way, the way that you can remember, and practice, 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 so you can do them when you're cold, wet, tired and frightened. Because I have been all of those things, and I've needed these knots, and they have saved my life and other people's lives because we could tie them right way every time. So what are the knots I'm going to talk about? And I'm not going to sit here and show you how to do it, because better videos than me. The knots I think you should know is the bowline, the clove hitch, round turn and 2 half hitches, a sheep bend, a figure of 8, and probably my all-time favourite knot, the Prusik knot. So we can run through these really quickly. As I said, I will direct you to the web. Bowline, fantastic knot. It makes a loop in a rope that won't shorten. And you've heard this. The old rabbit comes up the hole, round the back of the tree, and back in again. Beautiful, simple knot. Bing, bang, bosh. There we go. Probably, I would say, my favourite knot, maybe. So what's the characteristics of this knot? Well, that loop won't close. The great thing is even though this has been under load, you can break the knot by just pulling that open, and it will come undone very, very simply, even when it's been under heavy load. What are the drawbacks of this knot? It likes to be under constant tension. What it doesn't like is jiggling about, because in theory, if your tail's not very big, it can jiggle about and come undone. So if there's any chance of a bit of jiggling, maybe another knot is required, or put a very big tail in it, or put a little stopper knot on the back of the tail. But a great knot. Now, let's do clove hitch. I'll tie that around my arm. Very, very simple. Make an X, bring up through the middle of the X, one-handed, and there you have a clove hitch. Fantastic knot. Sailing, you'll see lots of people tying on their fenders with that. I would also probably use a round turn and 2 half hitches, but lots of people tie on their fenders with that. Fantastic. Cowboys use it to tie their horses up. Round turn and 2 half hitches, full turn, and then 2 half hitches, but always make sure that the 2 half hitches go exactly the same way round each time, because what you're actually doing is just down here, you're creating a little clove hitch. Round turn, 2 half hitches. Fantastic. And then we have the sheep bend, joining two ropes together, if I can find the end. The simplicity here is just fantastic. Up here, round the back through. I mean, just look how simple that is. Bang. 2 ropes joined together, they will never come apart. And again, a good knot, the beauty of it, you can collapse it and you can undo it. Double sheep bend, this rope follows round again. I haven't really put a big enough tail on it. And you can double it up, which gives you even more strength. Figure of 8. So, what do we use a figure of 8 for? Well, on sailing boats, you'll use it as a stopper knot. So at the end of a sheet, not a spinnaker sheet, we'll come on to that maybe on another story, you put a stopper knot. You want that to stop it running up through the mast, so that will hit into a pulley and stop nicely. Or as a climber, you make yourself a nice big loop, bang a figure of 8 into it, and then you've probably got your climbing harness on with a big carabiner on it, clip it in, and off you go. You'll go, hang on, why don't we put a bowline in there? Remember I said the bowline doesn't like being jiggled? Well, if you're climbing all day long, there could be a lot of jiggling going on. So we'll stick ourselves with a figure of 8. And then finally, in this rush through of knots, we come onto the beautiful Prusik knot. Quite difficult for me to show you. What you need on board your boat, in your rucksack, on your climbing harness, is a little loop of rope. And this is just so simple. Take the rope, pass it through there, if you can see, and you just pass it through 3 times. Put it tight, looks a mess, just put it all tight. Sort itself out eventually. And what's so brilliant about this knot? Well, if you push it up the rope, it won't come back down. You can push it down like that, gently, but if you push it up, so what can you do that with? Well, you can climb a rope doing this. If you put 1 loop on your foot, 1 loop on your climbing harness, you can climb up a rope it's hard work. This does start to jam after a bit, let's be perfectly honest. And people have invented Jumars and many things to be better than this. So why am I telling you this beautiful little knot? Because quite often you've got a line under tension and you want to get another line onto it and pull. The main thing on a boat where I've used this is you get a riding turn on the winch. You've got a rope coming from a hardened in sail. This is a rod almost, steel-like, and it's got onto a winch and you've got a riding turn on it. And what you need to do is get a line onto the line and take the tension off so you can get it off the winch. You've got one of these on board. You can get onto that line and you can put this on a spare winch and give it a tug, take the weight off the winch and take your line off. So there we are. Bowline, clove hitch, round turn 2/2 hitches, sheep bend, figure of 8 and the prusik. We have jogged through there to try and keep this video to a reasonable time. Great resource on YouTube. Some marvellous videos from people show you how to tie them. Go to the straightforward, simple knots. Learn them. I'm sorry I'm ranting. Learn them well. Get that muscle memory so you can do them first time every time. And those 6 knots will serve you in your sailing career, your climbing career, expeditions, whatever you want to do. They've served me well, and I've hardly had to, apart from fun and apart from sitting there with nothing to do while the tide comes in, picked up some of the other knots that you can use. And maybe we'll talk about a few others. I've seen people try to tie a boat off only last weekend to a bollard and make a right hash of it. So at the right time we'll run through a few other bits and bobs. But take those knots away. Bowline, clove hitch, round turn 2/2 hitches, sheep bend, figure of 8 and the prusik. Have some fun with those, learn how to tie them, and you'll be away, and you'll be a safe, useful crew, or you won't embarrass yourself on a climbing expedition. That's all I've got to say. I hope you enjoyed this relatively short episode of Shed Adventures. Please like and subscribe, and lots of views on knots. Come back with any comments and we can have a debate. Thank you very much indeed. Bye bye now.